just before we start that question about getting buy-in, I got a little story to tell you. Way back, this was when I was starting in Brampton, we had our public education program, and we had these big signs that we put at the entrance to the city, during the Emergency Preparedness Week. And the sign said, our usual motto is know the risk, have a plan, build a kit. All right, so that's our three main messages. So we had that on the board, and then I get a phone call from the mayor at the time, and she says, get that sign out. I said, what? Get that off. We don't have risks in Brampton. What? So no, you're going to make people think that this is a dangerous place. Tourists won't want to come to Brampton anymore. So we had to sort of tweak the message a bit and massage it. So that was my experience. It's difficult sometimes to get buy-in from the top, and certainly the mayor at the time you couldn't go any higher at that time. So so we have to make some changes. Since then, we've been able to train and educate the mayor that this does not mean it's dangerous. We're a safe city anyways, but people need to take some responsibility, and we got that. So anyway, just thought I'd share that information. So a little bit of background first, and maybe I can give you, before I talk a little bit about Brampton, a little bit about my information. Before I came to Brampton, I was working for Gatineau Public Safety, so Gatineau, Quebec, just across from Ottawa. And I was working in public safety, and that's how I got my feet wet into the emergency management field. And I don't know if any of you know, but and I don't know if it was on your survey, but Gatineau is the place where they hold the hot air balloon festival every year. In September, Labor Day weekend, there's a hot air balloon. It's huge. It brings in balloon enthusiasts from all over the world. Usually there's somewhere between 100 to 150 different hot air balloons all there. It's if you ever get a chance to go and see it, it is a fabulous festival, Labor Day weekend in Ottawa, or in Gatineau, across from Ottawa. And we used to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, because you can only fly hot air balloons early in the morning and late in the afternoon. So there was only two hot air balloon shows if you want during the day. So we were there with the kids. My kids were very young at the time. We would go, wrap them up in blankets, because September it gets cold, and we'd go there. We'd be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we'd be all set there. And of course, I was working for public safety, so I was, so we'd set up the family, and then I go to work, and I was part of the security team and walking around. So that's my first experience with security and safety on a large-scale event. And then we came to Brampton, and the first time we were called into action for an emergency event, for a special event to do some safety, was 2006. 2006, New Year's, the festival organizers decided and were able to sign a contract with a band called Our Lady Peace. Anybody know Our Lady Peace? They're pretty popular, okay, and pretty big band. And when we found out they said, Our Lady Peace, we did a bit of research, a little bit of, and some of the places where they'd gone, and we could see that this was going to attract thousands and thousands of people. And we said, hold on a sec, you just signed a contract, and we are the ones that are going to have to make sure this is safe. It's not going to work. Particularly because the area where we're going to hold a concert, we calculated, we went to that not 7, we calculated 4 people max per square meter, I guess. I think we were still in feet at the time. Anyways, we calculated the areas, and we said, based on that calculation, the most we can put there is about 10,000 people. And the prognostic was saying, we're going to get a lot more than 10,000 people for this show, definitely. So we said, we got to do something. There's got to be. So that's when we went with the idea of ticket. Actually, we had wristbands. So we had people had to register if they wanted. So we put the barricades up about a week in advance, the area, and people had to go. We had all sorts of communication messaging about, you've got to get your wristband, otherwise you won't be let in. And we were going to be very strict about the wristband. So we did. Now, New Year's Eve, this was for New Year's Eve, right? So New Year's Eve arrives, and we get the coldest winter day in the last decade at that time, right? And it's like minus 30, and freezing and blowing snow and heavy winds and all that. And instead of having thousands and thousands, 1,000 people, we barely got 5,000, and we had lots of room. So people without bracelet or whatever, we said, go on in, no problem. So anyway, that was our first experience. Not exactly what we had planned for, but we were ready for the worst case, and we got actually an easier task there. So let me give you a little bit. So Brampton, yeah. Oops, did I just do that? Okay, you can go to the first slide. Thank you. Oh, I can't see it. Oh, there we go. All right. So we're for those who don't know Brampton, we're a population of 600,000, and we have corporate events and private events. So we have about 30 events per year that the city itself puts on, and those are the main ones. And we have attendance from 100 people to we have had events up to 100,000 people attending. We have a lot of groups, community groups that come in and want to do events. We have a lot of cultural groups in particular. In Brampton, the South Asian community is very active. It's the most the cultural group that is most active in Brampton, and they have all sorts of festivals throughout the year. So a lot of and then we have things like Calian, which is a big event. And it's happening all over the city in different venues at the same time, but it's organized by a private organization, and the city is a sponsor on it. So that's what we've got. Now I come from the emergency management side, so I don't look at the leisure aspect. It's very interesting to know about the leisure aspect, but that's not my focus. My focus is, because I'm the emergency manager for the city, my focus has always been on preventing, mitigating, preparing, responding, and recovering from emergencies. And that includes prevention and mitigation for large-scale events, large crowd events. So that's where we come from, and that's our mandate. So what we did is that we, over the years, like I say, we started in 2006, but that means it's been over 12 years now since we started to do this. And over the years, we've grown and we've developed to the point that we actually put it in our bylaw. We have a bylaw now. Somebody was asking about how to get actually, we have a bylaw now at the city that says that emergency, all large crowd events will have to have an emergency management authorization. So we have the authority to review safety plans for any kind of large crowd event. Usually we say about anything that's over 500 people that you're expecting, then we want to see a plan. And we want to see what you got in there. Now, doesn't mean that we're going to force you to have certain things. In particular, you may not need to have police, depending, if it's a family picnic, but you're getting, all of the family from around the country. Well, maybe that's okay. You might not need police there. But anything else, if it's a hard rock concert, then definitely, we want to have some police presence there. So we determine that. We're supported by our special events group. So the special events team, we work very closely with them. And what we say is that basically they make it fun. You take care of the entertainment, the leisure aspect. You take care of that. We're not the experts in that, but we'll make sure that it's safe. And we'll do everything we can to make sure that the event is as safe as possible. We have now an experienced team. Like I say, we've got 12 years under our belt. And we do this in collaboration with a lot of people. So we bring together all of the people that may have a role to play in safety, depending on the scale of the event. So we do work very closely with Peel Police. We're in Peel. So Peel Police, of course, but we also work with our corporate security staff, and we work closely with them. But by law enforcement, the traffic division, we work with them to look at road closures, street closures, how that works. The works and parks, because they have the barricades, they know the layouts, they know the areas that are more at risk. They can go in beforehand and redo the parking lot, make sure all the potholes are filled, and there's all sorts of little elements, but we bring in all the experts. We don't have the expertise on everything, so we bring them all together. And we bring in property management. You were talking about having a place to shelter close by, so we make sure that we have these and that they're available, they're open, and there's people there that can direct any patrons coming in. Peel Police. St. John Ambulance is a very strong collaborator. We bring them in. We do bring Peel EMS, so the paramedics, we do bring them, but of course they have limited resources. They have to have crews on the road all the time, so they can't really free up a lot of ambulances and have a lot of people. That's why we go with St. John Ambulance. They have the resources that can do it, and they cost a lot less than the paramedics. So what we have is that we have an agreement that usually we will have at an event, we will have one ambulance with 2 paramedics there, and they'll work closely with St. John Ambulance. St. John Ambulance would do the initial assessment and work with the victims, and if there's any need, then transfer them over to Peel paramedics, who will do more extensive first aid and medical care. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about in a minute, but about the SERVE program, or Community Emergency Response Volunteers, because that's a key part of our program. These are just a few of the pictures that show how we work with all these agencies. So it's definitely fire. We have a fire command post. We were talking about having a command post on site. So we have a command post, and the command post goes out to every large crowd event, at least all the corporate ones, and a few of the private sponsored ones as well. And it's basically, we run it, we keep it close to the area, and it's basically our emergency operations center on site. And we run the whole event from there. And we do, to a certain extent, use the incident management system. I'd like to see more of that used, but we do use some of it. But we work directly from the command center. And we have Peel Police, St. John Ambulance are there, and our SERVE, lost and found. And certainly we always have a lost and found kiosk. We say, you know what, the kids never get lost. It's the parents that get lost. The parents are go crazy. They come to you, I lost my kid, I lost my kid. So we usually reunite parents with their kids. So that's what we do. But we take care of more. We have to do more work with the parents than we have to do with the kids, because the kids are having a great time. They're just enjoying themselves. Freedom, So those are just some of the pictures. We had the one on there was the Olympic torch. When the Olympic torch came around, and we were celebrating. We had that. So we had a big event at the city, and we had thousands of people going to that. So for the corporate events, we have an annual schedule. So we know in advance what events are going to happen on, and there's the Canada Day, and there's June 9th, we've got Brampton, which is a big event to celebrate how the city provides services to its citizen, and we have all sorts of things, and all the different departments have a little kiosk and little different things to showcase to our citizens where their tax is going, basically. What are we doing with their taxes? So we have all sorts of events, and we have all sorts of games and things, and every department is very creative in trying to show how we're doing things for the city and how we're good for our citizens. We take care of them. So that's an example of an event, and of course we bring in a little concert band, and we'll have a group coming to sing as well. So there's music in there. There's kids games. There's all sorts of stuff. So FSEO, which is Festival and Special Events Organization, office assigns a coordinator to look at the fun part, and then we assign BEMO, that's Brampton Emergency Management Office. We assign a team lead to work with the coordinator to make sure that we coordinate all of the safety elements of it. We create a safety committee. And usually, we've already started for Canada Day. We started back in February. So we start months in advance. We don't leave it to the last minute. We make sure that we have everything in advance. As the program is being developed, we're looking at different things. And I'll go into, in a minute, we'll talk about what a safety plan has. But that safety committee comes together and learns to know each other, because there is rotation. It's not always the same people, but also they look at all the different events, and people raise questions, and what about this, what about that, and that's the time to do it. So we do a little bit of that scenario mini exercise. We ask all these questions. What if this happened? What if that happened? We go through the scenarios a long time in advance. And the size of the event will determine how many meetings we hold between the time we start and the actual event. We produce, for corporate events, we produce a safety plan. So my team, whoever's the lead on my team that's assigned to that event, will create the safety plan. Over the years, it's become easier because we can take last year's plan and we can just modify it to reflect the reality of today's program or this year's program. But we always do it, and we send it around and review by the committee to make sure that we've captured everything that we want to do at the event. And then on site, we're there. So we're, police, we have police officers and we have St. John Ambulance, but we're also there. The team lead, whoever developed the safety plan for my team, is there that day on site with a number of my staff that are there, and we're coordinating. We want to be there at the time of the event while it's happening so that we're ready to respond. The idea is when you're planning, when an emergency happens, the first thing you need to do is you need to get people together, and that takes time. Opening your emergency operations center when you're dealing with an emergency can take some time for people to get there. They're coming from all over. So we want to make sure that if anything's going to happen at these events, we're already on site. We're already there. We don't need to start bringing in and calling people to bring them in. They're already on site. So we're doing that. That's for corporate event. Now we do also, going back to the question about, what do we, so we have private events. And the private events, there are possibilities. It could be that the city is a sponsor of that private event, but more often than not, we're the ones that own the land. Most of the parklands where these private events are happening is city property. So even though it may not be a city event, maybe not organized by the city, it's on our property, we have a level of responsibility, we have a level of liability. And even if it's not on our property, we do occasionally do events that are outside of our property. As soon as we're talking large crowds, these are citizens. These are Brampton citizens. They are people from our city. We care for them. We want to make sure that no matter in what context, they're safe. So if this organization puts on an event, which is going to bring in thousands of people, we don't want to just leave it to chance that maybe they're doing a good job or not. So we're working with them. And we're going to sit down with them. We're going to help them create a safety committee if they don't have one already. We're going to give them tips. We're going to give them tools. And I didn't bring them with me, but so we have actually a full questionnaire. We're talking about how, tips. Somebody was asking about tips and all that. And I can make it available through Sonia so that everybody, who wants. We have a questionnaire, which it can be big, it can be a little frightening because it's got, I think it's 4 pages long of all sorts of questions. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? But it helps people think, oh yeah, I should. One of the things that we often get is that the mayor gets invited to so many different events, and I'm glad I'm not in her shoes because she never gets a weekend off. But she's invited to all these events, and so one of the things we've added in that questionnaire is, have you thought of VIPs? Do you have a plan for VIPs? Are they protected while they're there? Or is there any special need that you have that you need to take care of while they're there? Our mayor is fairly safe. She does have maybe not a bodyguard, but she's got a couple of staff members that always go with her at different places. But you never know. If she's going to somewhere where there may be a protest, where there could be some kind of controversy with something that she wants to do with the city and that the group there may not like, we want to know what she's going into. So we don't just let our mayor go, here, good luck. And so when we're talking about a large event, when there's a possibility of having large crowds, we want to make sure that they've taken that in consideration. So all sorts of things like that. It may be big. Will you have media presence? But it helps them do that checklist. And if possible, depending on what it is, if they're expecting larger, we may actually even be on site ourselves, depending on the event. So for example, the Santa Claus parade every year is a very big event. I think last Christmas, even though it was raining, I think we had over 40,000 people attending the Santa Claus parade, and it goes on for 6-7 blocks, I think, something like that. Anyways, it's quite a fairly long drive, and you got 100 floats, so it lasts for probably about an hour and a half, but you've got people arriving 2 hours in advance to make sure that they got a good seat, right at the sidewalk, right in the front. So we put up a plan. It's organized by the Brampton Downtown Development Association, and that's great. They've been doing it for years and years and years. but the city has a vested interest in that these are our citizens, it's happening on our streets, so we do have a level of responsibility, liability, and we want to be there. So we're there. You know, our team attends the Santa Claus Parade every year, and we have a number of our staff that are on site ready. We have the command post there, and we're ready to react, even though it's not a corporate event, but we do it. What's an event plan? Okay, before I go there, I wanted to talk about the SERVE program, and I know I didn't put it, you know, but as we were talking, you were talking about overt and all that. I want to talk to you about the SERVE program. So it's a little bit of a sideline, you know, a segue, but basically, when I started in the City of Brampton a long time ago, it's going to be almost 20 years now in Brampton, and we looked at the emergency plans and the response and our capabilities and all that. And the plan, all of our plans call on various agencies to support us. The Red Cross is at the top of the list. I know there's a few people from Red Cross, or may have been from Red Cross before, but anyway. And we said, that's very nice, but what if the emergency is a GTA-wide emergency? What if something happens where it's the whole, you know, GTA? How many volunteers does the Red Cross, the St. John Ambulance, the Salvation Army, how many volunteers can they muster in a quick time to respond to a GTA-wide emergency? At first it said, we got lots of volunteers in it. I had some doubts. So we created a program in Brampton. We created the Community Emergency Response Volunteer Program, where we trained citizens to be able to respond to emergencies in their own neighborhood. If something happens next door, do you know what to do? If they're having a big party next door and the barbecue blows up, and you're the next door neighbor, do you know what to do? Would you be able to help those people that suddenly, because you're going to be there faster than the ambulance, the fire or ambulance, they'll be there fast, they're pretty good, you know, but maybe you can be there and maybe you can save a life. So we've trained citizens, and now we have over 200 people over the years that we've trained. And some of the things that we train them on, I've made some notes here to make sure. So we train them on hazards, and it goes back to the slide that I think, Christine, you were showing about what kind of training the volunteers have. So we have a very extensive training program. We train them on hazards, understanding hazards. We train them a little bit on emergency management, on emergency plans. They get first aid and CPR, but they go beyond first aid and CPR. We train them even in triage. You know, if you're coming to a scene where you're the first person and you've got one victim, you stay with that one victim and you take care of that person. That's great. That's first aid CPR. But what if you've got 10 victims? Who are you going to help? You know, that's triage. You want to go to the person to whom you can do the best, the most care. You can provide the most care. So we train them in that. Train them in triage. We train them in radio communication. We teach them how to, you know, not everybody knows how to talk on the radio. I mean, police officers get, you know, they get the training, you know, before you go and you start talking on that radio, you need to know some of the protocols, the etiquette, radio etiquette, we call it. You know, we talk about conflict resolution and anger de-escalation. You know, we don't want them to get into fights. When we send them to events, you know, we don't want them to get into a situation where they're going to get hurt. So we train them in how to recognize a little bit of that behavior that Lisa was talking, a little bit, not to the extent that she's talking, but a little bit of that. So recognizing when you can start to talk to somebody and try to de-escalate if somebody is very angry and get them to calm down, provide them help, reassurance that we're there to help them, to do something good for them. And when do you need to back away completely and say, okay, this is beyond me, now I got to call back, call on the radio, get police here, or get security here, and I leave it to them. You know, we train them on it. So our volunteers, and when we train them, the idea was to train them to be able to help and support us in emergencies, to do whatever we needed in the shelters, if we needed to open a shelter during a major emergency, all that. But then we realized that, no, these emergencies don't happen too often, thankfully, touch wood. And so what happens with these volunteers in the middle, you know, in the meantime? You got to keep them busy, otherwise they leave. They don't do it. You don't give them anything to do. You train them, and then they're gone. So what we started to say after we started being involved in emergency plans for safety, for large crowd event, we started involving and created special safety patrol teams. So our SERV volunteers join us during events, and they book, and we have a little software that you can schedule yourself in. So they have the list of all the different events that are coming up and how many volunteers we need and what kind of shifts we're going to have. And they go online and they book a shift here, a shift there, and they show up and at the event, and they're given a radio, they're given a little first aid fanny pouch, and they're sent up 2 by 2 as patrol, and they go around and they look for hazards, any kind of risk. You know, it's the see something, say something that we're talking. They're there, but they've been trained on what to look for. And they're ready to respond to minor first aid and CPR. They could be the first ones on site, and then if they need, they've got the radio, so one person will take care of it while the other calls on the radio. For backup, like I said, we've got a command post there, and we coordinate all communication from there. And we give a radio to police, we give a radio to fire, we give a radio to EMS, we give a radio to St. John Ambulance, and every team has a radio, and then we have ours, you know, at the central command. So we're able to connect very quickly with any of the agencies. We have radios for the event organizers as well, even the technical team that takes care of the sound system, because if we need suddenly to make a major announcement, we can go directly to that technical team and say, we need somebody to make the announcement, here's the announcement. So we have all this ability to communicate through radio on site. We don't rely on phones. We don't rely on cell phones. As I said, if everybody gets on the phone at the same time, that's it. We've just lost communication. So we've established that as part of our plans, and our SERV volunteers are trained in how to do all of this work and how to do this. And we send them out. And usually they're the first ones to find the lost kid. You know, and they're the first ones to look for the kids. If the parents have lost the kids, they're the first ones. We got a description. We send it out on the radio. Everybody gets it. Usually it's our people that actually find the kids and bring them back and and then we let police handle, reuniting with the family, but we bring them back. So we've been doing that, and our SERV volunteers, and the funny thing is, 2013, when we had the ice storm in the area, if you remember, there were 19 communities that were affected, and everybody was looking for Red Cross and Salvation Army and St. John Ambulance volunteers. Meanwhile, we called on our SERV volunteers, which are all Brampton residents, and they all came in, and they worked through the shelter management and all that, with some help with the Red Cross. I don't want to knock them. They're a great organization, and they're still tops in my book, but they needed extra manpower, and we had it. So we had the SERV. So the value of the SERV is certainly something we need to consider. So what does an event plan have? An event safety plan have? So basically, the event plan itself, the organizers, the fund group, tells us what they're putting on, what's the band, what the time, location, deck, the expected attendance, the target audience. Like I say, if it's a family picnic, we'll take certain level of safety, but if it's a rock concert, then it's going to be something else. And so we have to look and we have to evaluate. And we actually we go in and we check how this band, what kind of, depending on the main attraction, what they attract, what the kind of crowd is, And there's different crowds, and we look at that, and we look at what they've been bringing around to other places where they've gone, who are the people that have attended, to try to get an idea of the level of safety and security we're going to need there, the level of policing that we're going to need at that event. We do that. Look at the event detail, attraction list, etc., and then we look at the road closures. Before we even start doing anything, we look at how is this going to be accessible? Where are people going to come from? We look at the vendor list. We're talking about public health, all that, and we make sure that the vendors are all certified through public health. So we work closely with our public health as well, making sure that the vendors that are going to coming there are only accepted vendors recognized by the Region Appeal Public Health. So we do that. Parking and signage. We make sure that we have this appropriate signage everywhere we go. So we look at that. We don't leave that up to chance. And we don't leave it up just to the event organizer, because their idea of, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but their idea is mainly, we got to get a lot of people there. We want it's marketing, and that's great. It's leisure marketing, and I'm all right with that. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're doing it safely. So that's my focus, and I commit with a different set of eyes than what they may have. So when we do a safety plan, we do a site assessment. We go in and we look at these barriers. We look at choke points. We look at the possibility of evacuating people quickly if we have an emergency on site. How fast can we get people out of there? It's very nice. People are usually going to trickle in a little bit at a time. So coming in is not an issue, and we can put these choke points and have people there to supervise. We have security and all that, and we do spot checks on backpacks. Again, some of our security guards have some training on recognizing suspicious people and maybe stopping them before they go in. So we do that. But I'm more concerned about how do we get people out quickly if we've got a situation. So we need to make sure that those choke points can be opened up quickly if we have a situation now. So we look at that possibility, and we make sure that there's more than one entrance, more than one exit at every event. So the weather and the hazard modification. So that lightning detector that Ron was talking about, we've got one. Actually, the interesting thing is that we had one, and one of the events that we have downtown Brampton is the farmers market. So the farmers market is every Saturday from June 15 or June 16, I think this year, to October. And it's every Saturday morning. It opens at 7 and it goes till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's right, we close Main Street, our busiest street, the city, City Street. We close it for half a day on Saturdays, throughout most of the year. And because we're doing that, we have to look at, these farmers are bringing tents with metal poles and all that. So exactly what we talk. So we go every year and we do inspections. We go around and we check, what it is. What we also do is we monitor the weather. So on Friday afternoon, every Friday afternoon from June to October, we check the weather radar, what's coming up. And once in a while we call Ron and we say, Ron, the weather doesn't look good. Can you give me a little bit more? And he sends me a report on what's going on. So Ron, we're a client of Ron. And he sends us a report saying, okay, this is exactly what we expect. So now we know a little bit more, what we're looking at, and we can monitor. The problem is, a lot of people don't believe, and if I come in and you get blue skies and I'm saying there's a thunderstorm coming, people say, yeah, right, yeah, sure. So what I've got now is I've got that lightning detector, and on Saturday mornings when we know that there's a storm on its way or close by, I bring the lightning detector. And what it does is it has a very loud beep when there's a lightning strike within 30 kilometers or 60 kilometers. We put it at 30. We don't wait until the 15, because the 15 it's already too late when it's at 15 kilometers. So at 30 kilometers, it starts to beep, and it's very loud. And I go around the farmer's market, and they hear the beep, and all the vendors are there, and they know that, okay, well, that's a signal. We better start closing because something's coming. And so sometimes we've had one time where we had an early morning storm, and we had to postpone everything. So everybody went, sat in their cars, waited until the storm was past, and then we were okay to start opening. And sometimes we have to close early because the storm is coming in the early afternoon. But having my little box, and beep, beep, and oh no, there we go. We have to. So they don't. I'm the bad guy, but that's okay. They come to know it, and we need them. We've actually do some training with the vendors for them to understand that this is for the safety. It's the safety of the people there. We don't want them to be hurt, but we don't want the clients, their clients either. They want their clients to come back. Remember, but somebody said about these events that close because something wrong happened there, so the event then closes. Well, we don't want that. So we participate. We train the vendors in what this means and how you can help us. Because if I have a vendor, the farmers market, we get anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 people coming to the market every Saturday. So if I have to evacuate 5,000 people, and it's me and a couple of security guards, it's going to be quite a job to do that. But if every vendor is part of it, if they know that when the beep comes in or when they get a signal from me that we need to close, they just grab their cash and they go to the evacuation muster point, and they get everybody, as many people to come with them to follow them. Then instead of just being me and 2 security guards, now we have somewhere between 60 to 80 vendors every Saturday. Well, now I got 60 people up to 80 people that are helping me in creating this evacuation and moving these people out. So we train them. So we've got other ways of getting them. So we do, the weather monitoring is something we do very intensively, and Ron has been a very good participant to help us do that, because I'm not an expert in weather. Crowd behavior evaluation. So as we're going there, we try to evaluate. Did we get the target audience right, or did we make some mistakes? Maybe, and it's happened that we thought we were going to get one kind of crowd and we got another. So we have to adjust, and maybe we call back some people. We add extra. We talk to police, and maybe you should get a few officers on site, and they bring back people. Interagency communication. So we distribute all the radios, but we make sure that we have identified all the groups. We create a first aid location, a site, lost and found, security, parking, all of that. So all of these things are part of the safety plan. And then once the plan is written, it's distributed to all of the participants, all of the groups, including the event coordinators. They need to know that what the safety plan is about and how it's going to work. Now, one of the things that's important, and we did talk about this earlier, is at some point, somebody's got to make a decision. Somebody's got to have the authority. And let me tell you, the people that are probably the most difficult, I don't know if there's any in the room, but the people that are most difficult to get to accept when you have to do a cancellation or postponement are council. Any councilors here? No councilors here? Good? All right, we're good. So, city councils, generally, they're the first one they're going to protest if I make a decision to close something or to cancel. Fortunately, I don't have to do it too often, so I had to go and get that bylaw that also gives me the authority that if I say that we're closing an event, even though you've invested a lot of money, and we realize that, you've invested a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy in putting this event together, in the end, if there's a safety factor, then I will make that decision. Either myself or one of my team, whoever's the lead on that event. And we need council to respect that. So we have to go and get a bylaw so that our councilors now, they can't say, well, no, we don't like you and we're going to override that. I have full and final authority. We need to have one person. It's very nice to discuss and while we're getting close to that decision, there's a lot of discussion going on, evaluation, should we, shouldn't we, but at some point somebody's got to say, we're doing it. And in Brampton, it's either me or one of my team that is doing it. And the festival, special events, the organizers have agreed to that. They understand that if we're doing it, that's it. They've got to follow, and they've got to work with us in order to actually go ahead, make the announcement on stage, and tell people, sorry, something's happening, we have to close, get people out of the area, get people to a safe area, whatever is needed. They need to be part of it. So we've got, now, the financial impact is taken into consideration. We certainly want to look at that, but it's certainly not the driver. We discuss it, and we discuss the possibility of either delaying or postponing the event, because that's possible. Maybe we wait until the storm is over. Storm coming, maybe it'll be out in a couple of hours, so we'll postpone it. We'll get people inside, out of harm's way, and then we start again. Or last New Year's Eve, it was actually, we had a cold spell. You might remember, very cold last winter, and a lot of, actually Toronto canceled their New Year's Eve event, Mississauga canceled theirs, and we had a discussion as to, are we going to cancel or not? It's extremely cold, and we, in the end, we didn't close it, we didn't cancel it, but we reorganized the program, we rescheduled some of the event, and we only kept the major act, because it was costing us a lot of money, I don't remember how much, but, and they said, well, they're there already, they have just flown in from, I think it was Vancouver or something, so they were on site already, and they said, okay, we'll keep it on, and we'll let people know that everything else has been canceled, but that show is still on. And instead of having maybe 10,000 people, we had maybe 5,000 or so, but we still had it on, and it was extremely cold. But so that's the kind of decisions that we can do. There's 5 somewhat circumstances, and Ron identified. So extreme heat could be a reason why we canceled an event. If we know that we're going to have extreme heat, we're going to have people passing out from the heat, we have any kind of issues with heat stroke or large situation, we can make that decision that this is just too hot to have this kind of event. And vice versa, extreme cold. So we've had a few events where that's been the case. So we either cancel or postpone or make some kind of an arrangement there, but that's where we make that call. The other one that's interesting, and the fire guys in the room will probably be happy to hear that, but is that we also monitor wind speeds. Because a lot of these fireworks events, oh, thank you.
Right.
No problem. That's all right. Thanks a lot. So high winds can have a major impact when you're having fireworks. And we've had years where we've had these fireworks go up and suddenly a wind gust comes in and it carries the sparks and the little cinders to a much further than we had thought. So we try to do an area, we try to estimate where it's going to fall and how far back we need to move people. But it's not an exact science, and wind gusts can play quite a havoc with that. So what we do is that we monitor the winds, and within the last half hour, before the firework time, we measure, and it's we have a weather station, and we measure the winds exactly so that it's not just it used to be seems like there's a wind. Now we've got the machine, we've got the equipment to actually measure it, and if it's over 25 kilometers an hour, then we say that's it. We're not doing fireworks. No. And we can leave it up to the last minute if the winds die down and all that. We might be able to change that decision at the last minute if we end up having a situation which doesn't look like it's too bad. If we measure it again, it's gone down. But generally, that's our rule. 25 kilometers and up. No, we're not doing it. The other thing is that we were in contact with Peel Police. Very close contact, and they inform us if there's any kind of credible violent behavior risk or risk of terrorism. We rely on them. We don't have the intelligence. We don't know these things. We rely on them. But if they tell us, so for example, after the Ottawa Cenotaph event, basically Peel Police said, you've got Remembrance Day coming up. We think that could be a target. There could be some copycats. There could be people that are going to use that. And Remembrance Day, we have 2 legions in Brampton, 2 groups that put on various parades. So what we did is we reinforced our security. We added barricades in certain places where the parade was going to go through. We had extra police officers on site. We had quite a lot extra police for that year because we felt that was a credible risk. We didn't close it, we didn't shut it down, but we made sure that we enhanced our safety factor for that event. So that was one example. But we rely on Peel Police to tell us that. But ultimately, since it's our event, Peel Police can only make us recommendation. Ultimately, I'm the one, or somebody from my team, the one to make that final decision. And then other extreme warnings, certainly lightning is a big one. The lightning factor is, Ron was talking about this lightningmaps.org. I've got that all the time. It's on speed, on my favorites, I guess, on my telephone, and I'm constantly watching it. And I can tell you, where there's lightning strike all across North America with that, I can tell you right now, and I know where they're coming. So I constantly monitor that, at a site when something's happening, when we have an event, we constantly do that. So we do a lot of work in advance. It's all prevention, mitigation, making sure that the event is going to be safe. We do a lot of that work ahead of time, so that while we're at the event, we actually don't do a whole lot. We basically hand out the radios to everybody, and we sit back and we listen, and we wait, and hopefully nothing happens. We delegated all the work. The SERV members are taking care of the lost children, and they're working with police, and we just sit there and wait. And we've been fortunate. We've never had any major incidents. We've had a number. We've had drunkenness. We had one year in New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve seems to be the most difficult one. 1 year in New Year's Eve, we had 3 people in 3 different spots fall unconscious from overdose, drug overdose, all at the same time while we were ringing the New Year's. The bell was ringing, and and the fireworks were going off, and at the same time. So we had to deploy crews, teams, first aid crews and paramedics and all that in 3 different parts of the site at the same time. But we're ready for it. We know how to do. We have the communication ability. We can get people on site very quickly that know what to do, and we've been able to react. So our role is really a role of leadership and in coordination, bringing people together. We're not the experts in policing and security and in any of these. We bring in the experts and we work with them. The one thing that the festival and special events people are very grateful is that they don't need to do it anymore. They can concentrate on making the fun play. Having that event be fun. And you can make it as fun as you want. We'll make sure that it's safe. Well, that's our job, and we've been doing it now for 12 years, and it's entrenched in bylaw, so we're going to keep doing it for a long time. And I've got tools that I can share. I'll send them to Sonia. If anybody wants those questionnaires, sample templates of safety plans and things like that, I'll be happy to share them with you.
So does your division pay for the emergency service personnel that you have to bring in at an event? Do you pay for the paid duty officers, for St. John's Ambulance, and any other expenses to ensure that all the emergency management plan and actions are
so the work that we do is all in-kind work. So the work that my team does is, we don't charge anybody on it. Even when it's a private event, we'll give advice, and we'll even attend some of the events, like the Santa Claus Parade I was talking about, we'll event, and it's a city service. We consider this as we're there to protect the citizens of Brampton. That's our mandate, make sure that our citizens are as safe as possible. So we're there, it's part of our mandate, so we're already getting paid to do that kind of work. We just have to reorganize the schedule. However, policing is a different matter. Paid duty officers are called in, but they have to be paid by the event organizer. So festival and special events pays for the police. They'll pay for paramedics. They'll pay for, there's a donation that goes to St. John Ambulance for their service. So there's a number of those. So yes, but that they put in as part of their budget. Right. When they go to get the budget approved for the event, it's part of it. It's calculated. But my services directly, no, there's no extra charge for that.
And in terms of preparing and developing an emergency management plan, how small do you have one for a park opening? Like I recognize for a winter fest or a Celebrate Brampton, a Canada Day, right, at that scale. But what about for smaller events? Do you encourage that other municipalities or the event organizers do have an emergency management plan for those as well?
So what we've done is that we've also, not only we do a lot of the planning ourselves, but we usually look at anything over 500 people. Okay. Then that's sort of a rule of thumb. We've done it for less occasionally, but what we've also done is that we've trained our festival and special events people to be on the lookout for some of those hazards, some of those risks. So that if they're running a smaller event, and they run a lot more events than we do, if they're running a small event, what are the things they should be looking for? And sometimes they'll say, you know what, maybe we should have a plan, and they'll call us, and if they call us and they want a safety plan, we'll go in and we'll work with them on doing it. Yeah, we've done plans for about 100 people, but yeah, we'll do that. But we train, we do a bit of training or awareness, if you want, for them.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other questions?
How did you set up CERT? It's okay to go into a little bit more detail.
Okay. At first it's interesting because we weren't sure exactly. So we actually went, with the first year we did it was, I think it was 2001. It was before 9/11, so we didn't even know that it was going to be this kind of an environment would be coming in. But we went and we talked, we worked with Red Cross, and we worked with Salvation Army and St. John Ambulance, and we explained how we felt a little insecure in being part of the GTA, in saying that we rely on the Red Cross to do all of the volunteer, providing all the volunteers for every single emergency that we have. So we went to them and said, we've got this idea. We borrowed some of the concept from the CERT in the States. You know, you might be familiar that in the States they have a CERT program, Community Emergency Response Teams. So we researched that, and we found very quickly that we couldn't use the CERT because in Canada, there's a lot of things that the CERT do in the States that they can't do. You know, for example, one thing they can't do in Canada is they can't direct traffic, because traffic is something which is restricted to police officers and school guards. In the legislation in Canada, the school guards, school crossing guards, and police are the only people that can do, you know, traffic direction. So he said, okay, so we can't do that. Search and rescue has to have specialized training, so Overt does some of it, and even that, they can't do a heavy urban search and rescue. I don't believe that they do, but they do other kinds of, but we were very limited in the amount, the kind of rescue that we could do. So, so we had to tweak it, and we went with Red Cross, Salvation Army, all these, and we said, can you help us in launch that? And they agreed with it, and they worked with us, and we did a first pilot project in developing the training modules for that program with them. And they really provided a lot of the input. So the first class, if you want, we had about 20 people that were actually already volunteers with some of those agencies. And we refined the training after that, we modified a bit, and then we went out to the public. And very quickly, we got people. We did a lot of promotion first to city staff and region appeal staff, and we got a lot of people that the first couple of classes that were, you know, and then we also went with places where there's people that have a little bit more time, so we went to seniors. We thought seniors are not, actually seniors are pretty busy, believe me, you know, because they're retired doesn't mean they're not busy, they're busy. But we did find a number of the seniors, people that were retired that said, hey, that sounds interesting, I'd like to do that, and they started. And over the years, we've actually done very little publicity. It's more word of mouth. So our CERT members are there, they also help us do public education. So every time we have a kiosk somewhere in a mall or an emergency preparedness week, or you know, or we go and do a presentation in a school or in a gymnasium somewhere, some of our CERT members come with us. And they have a big, they have a red shirt. They're very well identified, so we give them a little bit of a uniform, and they go out there and they're very proud to wear their red shirts, and they're very visible. And people say, oh, what's that red shirt? And they see the logos and all that. And over the years, we've been able to grow the program with really very little you know, marketing of it. It's been really, you know, easy to do. People just come to our kiosk and say, hey, can I be part of that? Sure.
The resourcing though for the CERT program.
It doesn't, there's not a lot of resources. Basically, it's a little bit of our time. We count on people from, again, I'm not an expert in all of these things, so we talked about this conflict resolution and all that. Well, that's done by some officers from Peel Police. They come in and they talk about that, you know, because they train in that. So why should I try to retrain that? We bring them in. The first aid CPR, St. John Ambulance did that. We have an arrangement with them. They give the training, you know, first aid CPR. Triage is done through our fire department. So all of these different training sessions are done by people that are volunteering their times from the city. They're different city staff or different or regional staff, and they come in and they provide an hour here, an hour there, and then we usually do about 2 training sessions a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. And so they come in, they give us an hour of their time to be able to train these citizens, and they see it as a benefit. At first, there's a little hesitancy, you know, and say, well, you're going to train them to do my job, and no, we're not going there. We also have a code of ethics, so that the volunteers with the CERT, when they start, they have to sign a code of ethics. There's certain things, but in particular, one of the things that we say is that as soon as there's an emergency response agency on site, you transfer over the care of whatever you're doing to the emergency responder. You're not professional emergency responders. You may be the first one on scene, there's nobody there, there's no sirens, there's no flashing lights around. Well, you're it. You can go ahead and take action according to what you've been trained. But as soon as those flashing lights are around, then you transfer it over to whoever are the professionals. You let them take care of it. And so that's part of our code of ethics, and they've agreed to that. And generally, people are, and the other thing is that it's not like a doctor that has to sign an oath, you know, so if they don't feel comfortable, in front of a situation that they can actually provide the care, there's no obligation. They're not obligated to that. And the good thing also is that they're covered under our insurance. So whereas other spontaneous volunteers that may come in and help people, they may be protected by the Good Samaritan Act, but that has limitations as well. Whereas our volunteers are all covered under the city insurance. I don't know if that gives you an answer. Okay.
Any more questions? Just giving you an example of the resourcing for most municipalities, it's usually either one person, so for the city of Markham, you're looking at her, and for other municipalities, smaller municipalities, it's double hatting of our fire chiefs or deputy fire chiefs who are emergency planners and deputy fire chiefs. So the resourcing for,
Mark and Jillian from Calian are there, and basically they're doing it, but their first priority is fire. And so
Absolutely.
I raise my hat to them because they do a fabulous job, and you've got a lot less resources than I do.
So I think ultimately for us, it's just moving towards the ideal and starting from the basic. That's basically
If you
it.
get in the bylaw, then maybe you can request additional staffing, and
Right? Alain, any more questions for Alain? You'll send you all the resources.
We'll share.
There'll be checklists that I'll send out to everyone who registered. If you want me just to send out an email with all that information, I can do that for you, no problem. Thank you so much, Alain.